All right. Hey, everybody, this is Jeff Martin with Magic City Books. We're so thrilled to have you back here for our weekly virtual author series, which we've been doing since early April. And we've been doing about 2 or 3 author events a week, which has been really great. Good way to stay connected to you, our fans and readers, give you something hopefully to look forward to. It's nice to have something on the actual on your schedule. You know, we don't really have schedules or dates much anymore, but these are things you could put on there and have something to look forward to. I actually went to a movie theater today. I rented out a movie theater for some of my friends, and we went to see Tenet, the new Christopher Nolan movie. So there was like 6 people in a giant theater. We were all kind of in our different corners, socially distanced. And it was weird, amazing, awkward, and fun all at the same time. So it felt good. And aside, forgive me for digressing there, but so excited to have you guys here joining us. I want to mention a couple things coming up. Tomorrow night, so that's the of September, we'll be in conversation with Margaret Atwood, which is going to be really exciting. I believe there are a few tickets left for that. It's almost sold out. She was kind enough to actually sign actual physical books for us. So if you get a ticket for that, you get a signed book from Margaret Atwood, which is no small thing. So that's coming up. And then I want to mention a couple of other things. Go to our schedule, magiccitybooks.com. You can see all the things we have coming. We just booked a great event with Layla Lalami and Roxanne Gay in conversation, which is going to be really special. We have an event this week on Thursday with a woman named Rachel Louise Snyder, who wrote a book called No Visible Bruises, which is really, really powerful book about domestic violence. It was one of the top 10 books of the year for the New York Times last year. And as much as it's not a fun topic to talk about, it's an issue that's really become even more pressing in this quarantine era. There's just a ton of increases in domestic violence calls and some of those things. So we're going to talk about that. We try to mix it up where we're talking about some really serious, important things, and then also getting silly and having some fun too. Try to make a little bit of a mixtape for you here for book talk. So pay attention to what's coming up. We hope to see you there. I have been a fan of Aimee Bender's for quite some time. And I do think she is one of our true masters of the short story form. I think that's how I first came to know her work. And if you're a true lover of short stories, which I am and always have been, it's kind of its own thing. And there's this kind of constellation of stars that we have in our world right now. You know, George Saunders, of course, and Aimee Bender, and some of our favorites. And I get excited anytime I see something new from them. And but Amy's kind of annoyingly talented at both novels and short stories, which is just almost not fair. And it's been, I think, a good decade since her last novel. And we've been waiting. I have been waiting. And so when the Butterfly Lampshade came across to me, it was kind of like, you know, you finally got to quench a thirst that you've had for a long time. And reading her prose, if you've never read her work, it's almost hard to describe. You know, she has a kind of point of view and the way of looking at the world that gets you excited to dive into someone's work, which is, I think, the real mark of a true writer. You know, someone who, I always think of it like, you know, people who tell me they don't like, say, Neil Young or Bob Dylan, and they say, I don't like the way they sing. And you're like, you kind of aren't getting the point here. It's not about the singing. It's about the perspective. It's about the voice. It's about the way that they're unlike anyone else. And that's Aimee Bender's work for sure. But tonight I'm going to sit back and enjoy this because I have my buddy Kevin Smokler who's going to be doing our moderating. Kevin's been a pal for a long time. We've collaborated on a few different things. And his book, BRAT Pack America, which we'll be having on sale for tonight, is just, you know, Kevin's just like this font of knowledge of like pop culture. And he's the guy I would go to if I wanted to know anything about, you know, say pop cultural things about the last 30, 40 years of our lives. But he has a great new documentary, which I've had the pleasure of seeing, called Vinyl Nation. It's about great indie bookstores. I think about a week ago on Independent Bookstore Day was Record Store Day as well, which got pushed back. If you love vinyl, if you love collecting, if you love the kind of smell of going into a great bookshop, look for Vinyl Nation. Our friends here at Circle Cinema, our great nonprofit indie cinema here, are doing a virtual streaming of Vinyl Nation, I believe, as we speak. So if you go to circlecinema.org, you can support Circle Cinema and you can watch this kick-ass documentary that Kevin spent a lot of time and effort making. It's a really, really fun movie. So it's a little plug for Kevin there. So Kevin's going to moderate tonight. If you guys want a copy of the Butterfly Lampshade, which you do definitely want to do, we're going to be putting links here in the chat. We'll do that a few times so you can get that from us. And, you know, all that money goes back into Magic City Books, into our mission, and getting it from us. I don't think I need to tell you all, you know, just a good way to do that. If you have questions for Kevin or for Aimee or for both, put those into our Q&A and we will try to get to those as we go. But I'm excited to hear this conversation. I want to thank Aimee for writing this wonderful book, all the work that she's done, and I'll turn it over to my pal Kevin to take it from here. Thank you both.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm so glad to see you all. Magic City Books is one of the great bookstores in America, in one of the great cities in America. I have been fortunate to get to know Tulsa by its unofficial mayor, Jeff Martin. So it's really a special place, and I can't wait to come back. I tell people all over the country that you have to come to Tulsa, and I think I hope that Aimee and I, in our trips to Tulsa, have exemplified how us people from California should behave when visiting other states. I'm positive that for Aimee, and I hope that's true for me. So it is great to see my old friend Aimee Bender, who has been a friend of mine, and I have been an admirer of her work for so many years. And when I found out that her new book, The Butterfly Lampshade, was coming out, I had to get in touch with her and say congratulations, and I also had to say, how can I help make sure that people know about this book? And through those conversations, we came to doing something here at Magic City Books. Thanks to Jeff and his staff for helping us out. Aimee, I think we're gonna read just a little bit of this, right?
Yeah, we're gonna read, and I also want to just say my big thanks to Magic City Books, which I truly hope to visit in person someday soon, and to all of you for being here. Thank you for coming, and just a beautiful intro, Jeff. Thank you very much for that. And Kevin, thank you for being here with me, and it's just a delight and a treat.
Absolutely.
So, you know, like with these virtual events, I think it's sort of the deal is there's more pairing up of people, because I think it just works better. And so that's been like the side pleasure of this whole kind of weird virtual tour, is actually getting to talk to people I love to talk to. So
oh yeah, it's really been a treat. And I will say that when you do get to Tulsa in person, perhaps Jeff will indulge you and take you to all of the sites in the S.E. Hinton universe, like he did for me.
So good.
Yeah, that was really fun. And Jeff was kind enough to drive me around on a hot April day to a bunch of the famous locations in S.E. Hinton novels. So.
I love it. And now there's Watchmen to add to the list. There's just multiple layers of things.
Yes.
So we are going to read, Kevin has kindly agreed to read the first thing with me, because there's these several chapters in the book that are just dialogue stripped of any dialogue tags or any descriptions, and are just voices suspended. And so they work kind of like a play reading. And this is the opening chapter of the book, so you don't really need to know much more beyond that. And I'm going to play two characters, which I think will also be clear. And Kevin is going to be playing one. So you'll see. Yeah.
All right.
Chapter 1. We cannot tend to her. There is something wrong with her.
What do you mean? What's wrong with her?
We do not know. Something.
She seems like such a normal little girl to me. Last visit, she...
It is hidden.
Did she do anything? Did she do something bad?
No.
Well, then what?
We cannot handle her. I cannot.
But what do you mean by that? Is she misbehaving?
No.
Then what? Oh, is she getting in trouble at school? I'm sorry.
All right. You have to come get her.
I don't understand.
You are the godparents. You have to come. That is your job.
But you are alive, Elaine.
I'm telling you, I can't do it.
Where's that new guy you were talking about?
Camping.
Is he coming back?
I don't know.
Are you going to do something, Elaine?
I could call social services. Maybe I will. Are they listed? Will they do foster care if another family is available?
Can you put her on the phone?
No.
Is she nearby?
She's right here. She's looking right at me.
Can you tell her to come on the phone?
Francie, dear, your Aunt Minnie wants to speak to you.
Hello? Francie?
Hello.
Francie, are you okay?
Yes.
You've been listening to our conversation.
Yes.
Your mother is very worried about you. Do you think you might be doing anything wrong?
No.
Have you been going to school?
Yes.
Have you been behaving properly in school?
Yes.
Are you going to bed on time?
Yes.
I have to tell you, I am more worried about your mother. Do you think she might be getting sick again?
Yes.
Can you tell me what she's doing?
No.
You can tell me. I know she's probably listening, but it's okay. Really, she knew I would ask you. Is she hurting you in any way at all?
No.
Is she stressed?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Are you feeling okay?
Yes.
Do you need me to come up there?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by yes, as in why?
No.
Is your mom's friend there?
No.
He's out of town?
I don't know.
Is anybody else there?
No.
Is your mother hurting herself?
No.
Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I just can't come this time, not right now. I'm too pregnant. I'm not allowed to go on a plane, but your uncle can, though. Do you want your uncle to come?
No.
Oh, Francie, who is the best grown-up for you to call?
It's me again, Min. She dropped the phone. She's standing by the wall now. She puts her nose right up against the wall. It's touching the wall.
What is happening over there?
Like she is talking to the wall. She has this look, Min.
Kids have looks.
No, other kids don't have this look.
Elaine, she can hear our whole conversation, for God's sakes.
She is judging me all the time.
Kids don't judge, not like that.
She does.
Are you still on the Abilify?
I cannot be around her. There's something in her. There is a bug in her. I cannot even trust myself around her. Are you listening to me?
Yes. I'm sending Stan up. The minute he gets home, morning flight.
Not Stan, you.
I can't fly. And what do you mean, a bug?
A bug in her, something crawling inside her.
Can she stay somewhere else? Where can she stay?
I don't know.
A friend?
I don't like her friends.
A friend of yours?
She loves her babysitter.
Okay, ask the babysitter, of course, tomorrow, or I'll call her too. We can both call her, okay? This is the one who also works at school.
Shrina.
I have her number. We'll work something out, honey. You have to call your doctor. We'll both call the doctor.
I know I should. I know I do.
And I will too. So that's a start. We have a plan now.
We do?
We'll both make some calls in the morning. Okay, let's go over the plan. What are you going to do tomorrow?
I'm going to call my doctor.
Good. And?
I'm going to call my doctor.
And if you feel able, ask the babysitter.
Right. And I will ask the babysitter.
What are you going to ask the babysitter?
If she will take my sweet girl, Francie. But what do I mean again? Where will she take her?
You know what? I'll call Shrina. Don't worry about that. You take care of yourself. Maybe Francie can stay with her a couple of days while we get you feeling better. Do you know where she lives?
She's very young.
Francie?
The babysitter.
It's just, until Stan can get up there, I'll tell her he'll be coming as soon as he can.
How many months are you again?
8.5. So that's the plan for tomorrow. But what about tonight?
Tonight. Exactly.
Does she have a lock on her door?
Her bedroom door? Yes, she does. She asked for that.
What do you mean? She asked for a lock?
Last year for her birthday.
You're kidding me. Did she ask for anything else?
Is that odd?
Just a lock?
Yes.
Unbelievable. But okay, she's a smart girl. It's very useful from the inside.
Yes.
And how about you?
We can both lock our doors from the inside.
Okay, you will need to do that then. Why don't you do that as soon as we get off the phone, use the bathroom first, and then go to bed? You can call me tomorrow morning?
Yes.
You'll call the doctor?
Yes.
You'll call me if you need anything, absolutely anything?
Yes.
Tell Francie goodbye. Tell her I love her.
You're on speaker. She can hear you.
Jesus. Goodbye, Francie. Did you hear that about locking your door?
Yes.
I love you, Francie.
She doesn't say I love you.
I will say it anyway. She doesn't have to say it back. I love you, Francie.
Goodbye, Min. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. We'll figure this out.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. Now go to your room now, honey. Good night.
Thanks.
Wow, that's all right. I'm all sweaty, like that. Yeah, it's really intense.
Very intense. But
So
you
I'm good.
beautifully. Thank you for being
Oh,
such Ant-Man.
I appreciate you my C- acting, like going along with the first chapter of your book. We just want to let everybody know that they can post questions in the chat feature down below, and also links to how to purchase the Butterfly Lampshade are in the same chat window. Yes, I'm gonna hold the microphone. I think the audio will be a bit better, except when we have some visual aids here, and then I will put it down. I guess I'd just like to start. I think I have this weird conception about how your previous book, The Color Master, ended, and the new one, The Butterfly Lampshade, began. And I think in my head they kind of happened on the same day. You like put your put your pen down on The Color Master, and then we're like, I see a lamp, and then the next one. But correct me and tell me sort of how the previous book ended and how this one kind of swam into view.
Well, I mean, they're very impacted by what was going on in my life at the time, because with stories, I feel like stories are sort of accumulating over time, and I like to work on multiple projects at the same time. And The Color Master was kind of really The Color Master was the stories I was working on during The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake. So there was almost a 10-year period of writing stories, and then it ended up as that book. And then I kind of had a blank slate, because those were all, and the year that The Color Master came out, 2013, I also gave birth to twins who are now 7, who, like, at that moment, like, that was a book I could put into the world because it had all been written. But then when the babies were born, that obviously was a gigantic life change. And I had to kind of reconfigure how I was going to fit writing in, because my time, which had been very much mine to kind of schedule, because my teaching schedule is pretty flexible, had suddenly obviously changed dramatically. And so this book, The Butterfly Lampshade, came out of initially 10-minute blocks of time for about a year. When they were 6 months, I sort of started writing again, but it was a 10-minute blocks of time, and then 20 minutes the next year, and little by little. And it kind of reflects the way I find a novel anyway, which is to see which characters stick around. And there were aunts and uncles that I was writing about instead of mothers and fathers, and I didn't know why. And there was this character, Francie, that sort of emerged, and I didn't know why were there aunts and uncles and where was her mom. And it took a while to kind of piece those parts together. But so that the butterfly itself didn't show up for a while. But even The Color Master, even parts of that happened sort of, there were definitely a couple years of just exploring, wandering, feeling stuff out before I kind of had a sense of who the group was, and in that scene that we just read, that's a lot of the core members of who becomes the whole of the book.
And so you feel, as an author, you feel okay having a couple of things going, different kinds of things going at the same time. That's a good gear for you.
Yeah, I feel not only okay, but I think it seems to work better, because it's always a dance about depressurizing the work so that it doesn't sort of get under that, tire of awareness, really, and criticism. So it's the more things that I can sort of skip between, the better chances that they'll each get a kind of unobstructed work time. And then as soon as I can feel myself begin to critique it, then I maybe veer into the next one.
And do you keep the number small enough so it isn't like reading 9 books at the same time, where you advance 10 pages on all of them, and then you haven't finished anything in 2 years because you're sort of moving a little bit on 9 separate lanes of the highway?
It's funny, because sometimes students of mine will come in and say that they want to finish this particular short story, say, because they never finish anything. But I think my belief is that it's better to find the thing you want to be working on than to finish something just to finish it. So I think I will have 9 different things, and if they all fizzle out, then they all fizzle out. But maybe the 10th will have a motor, right? So that all the cars will just be dead vehicles but then one of them And that's the one that that's the one that seems to become a book, because I don't know when I sit down what is going to be the material that has kind of the gumption to keep going. I just don't know. Like, that's one of the fascinating things about writing to me, is that it's not like I can think up an idea and be like, this will be my story. Like, it just doesn't translate that way. It just shows up on the page or it doesn't.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think what I find different about the Butterfly Lampshade, and I'm curious if this was part of the process you're describing, is there's 3 different narrative timelines going on in this book. And you sort of have to give yourself a minute every time you go to the next chapter and say, are we in the present? Are we 20 years ago? Are we 30 years ago?
Mm.
Tell me about, I guess that's a small part of a larger question, which is, tell me about that choice. And is there anything else in the Butterfly Lampshade that was new and different for you from the work you've done on your previous books?
Well, it felt, I mean, it's just interesting to think about, for me to think about how things kind of evolved, because I could feel there was this sort of territory of her past, like the time period that we just read from, where Francie's 8, and that was the kind of strongest pull for me. But I didn't want it to, I kind of also knew that it would be a looking back story, that it wasn't going to be centered in. So there's this sort of leap of 20 years forward where she's looking back from about sort of 27-ish, 26. I think there's like a little math that had to be done to figure out the appropriate age to make it all work. And so then in that way, the present, even though I think that one of the rules you get drummed into you with writing is that, like, the present is where the action is. The action is so internal in this book that it was like the past is the sort of pull. As I was writing, all the past scenes felt like they had a sort of different pull. And the present scenes were much more about creating a space to think about the past. The way I think, if you're doing any sort of excavating of thinking about the past, that is often how it feels. Or like, I'm reading Kindred by Octavia Butler right now, and it's a time travel book, and it's an amazing novel. But I was thinking, oh, I do see how the past, that when she travels back in the past, like literally back into the time of slavery, that is the thing that's pulling the book along. And when she's back in 1975, like in that book, it's just you just see how there's this pull historically in that book. It's just done so incredibly well. So I think in my own sort of, this was more of like a, inside this one particular character, her particular past. Those two felt like they were moving along. And then it became about memory, but hopefully it's like memory as the sort of rolling thing underneath the present, which I do believe is how it works. Like, I believe in that as a truth about human beings.
It seems like the right choice for a book with these particular themes, which are sort of grief and healing and memory, if I can be so reductive about them. Those are things your work has dealt with before. But I also feel like in many, particularly in the short stories, which are a different form, and sort of you need to get to the point faster in a short story. But I feel like it is pretty easy to say what one of your short stories is about. My favorite one, which I think is in Willful Creatures, is about the guy who has keys for fingers. That doesn't give away anything that's going to happen. It just starts with a premise where you're like, oh, I can see all the different directions this is going to go.
Oh.
And yet with this one, it's a little bit harder to say. Okay, here's the key turning in the ignition and watch it go.
Right.
And that seems to me, in part, I'm not sure I have a question here. I'm just going to talk until I sputter out, and then you can jump in. But that seems to me because it is the best container to pour these particular themes into.
That's nice. And it's like, I think the kind of dislocated feeling that you were talking about in time is in some level purposeful, to feel like there's a kind of jumping around, and maybe kind of, I think maybe this is true of novels in general for me, but just wanting to throw certain elements together and see how they fit together. So here it's like, there's the world of, she has a mother who has psychotic episodes. She's someone who doesn't fully trust her own thinking and the sort of boundaries of her thinking and her own impulses. And that's part of the book, is her anxiety about that. And then there are these supernatural elements that happen, and what are they about? And then there's imagination, like all these things sort of inside the same soup of the book. And there's, I mean, just riffing on what you said, I worked for years in my own family. I had an aunt who struggled with like a severe bipolar diagnosis, and she had psychotic episodes. And that was a big deal for my mom, who adored her. And also just, it was so frightening to her, and it was so worrisome. So there was a lot of that sort of complexity that is something that I experienced as my mom's daughter, and sort of all of that. But sort of related to that, I think led me once to this group I worked with for like 8 years, which was called the Imagination Workshop. And we did playwriting with psych patients that had been at one point hospitalized and now weren't. And they were often quite functional and often not quite functional. There was a huge range in the group. And we would put on these plays, and they were these like amazingly, they were musicals. One of the women wrote the songs, and like there was a writer, there were many actors there, and there was a psychiatrist and occupational therapist. And then we were there to sort of facilitate the show. And it was like incredible. And I loved it. But one of the most educational moments for me was one guy was schizophrenic, and he would do his various improvs, and they would be very wonderful. And we never considered that they were like going to change his diagnosis, but they gave him like a brief respite. And then sometimes he would start hearing the voices that he would hear, and he would kind of have to leave, you know, like he would need to he would need to get a different medication maybe at that moment. And it was really painful to see what he was struggling with. But the moment that just connects to some of the stuff I was thinking about for this book was once the psychiatrist said, as this guy was leaving, and we were all feeling bad because he was going through an episode and it was clearly tormenting him, is he said that some of his psychotic stuff would get triggered by anxiety. So that the psychotic episode that had seemed like this thing coming from nowhere and descending upon him and putting him in this category that people might stigmatize was coming from anxiety, which was something that I felt like is so familiar to me. Like I know about anxiety, but to think that the anxiety could move into this place of psychosis for him, which was like a whole other world, even though anxiety is its own world, right? It has its own strangenesses, but psychotic behavior becomes its own other thing, made me feel like that line between all the different ways we experience the world was just so much more close than I had known. And I think that had a big impact on me, because it also just felt like, you know, my compassion for him kind of quadrupled, because I already felt bad for him, but I felt like, I can really relate to the thing that got him there, even though it ends at a different point and a much more functional point for me. Here it was for him entering this other space. So really long way to say, these are some of the things, and thinking about like, where does anxiety fit? What if you have a mother who's dealing with psychotic episodes, and then you have a daughter who's confused about her own anxieties and the ways that this has affected her, and then you have another family that's much more stable. Like, what happens when you put all these characters in the mix together? And that is the vessel for my long-winded answer. I think that's what I wanted to put in the vessel and try to work with for this book.
I'm in the middle of reading Robert Kolker's book Hidden Valley Road right now, which is a study of the premier bit of research on schizophrenia that was done in America. It was about a family of 10 kids in Colorado, and 8 of them had schizophrenia. And and one of the things they talk about in this book is that schizophrenia comes along at basically the same time in the life of it comes along in the early to mid 20s. Right. And so a schizophrenic person is always in their early 20s in the eyes of their family, because even though they age, that's when they first started showing signs of their disease.
Totally makes sense.
And I guess I bring that up as a way of saying your work is very much about young people. Yeah. You know, your characters are almost always young people, even though this is 6 books into your career, as opposed to, you know, when I started reading you 20 years ago. I'm always fascinated by artists who do this. Amy Heckerling is one of my favorite film directors, and she's 66 years old and has always made movies about young people. Tell me about this choice and source of inspiration for you.
And such an interesting fact you just shared from the book. I appreciate knowing that. I think it feels to me like it's such a big time of growth and of struggle. My 20s certainly were, but they also were kind of awakening. So I feel like because of that, I think I would like to write about, middle age and different things going on now, but I also feel like, again, it goes to this idea that it's not like I picked the material. It seems to be that this is the area that maybe I have the most to explore. And like, if I think of much of like my high school years or adolescence, I just feel like a lot was going on that I was not registering. And so it's almost like now, as in a more kind of hopefully present space, to be able to look back at that time and think about what was really going on, or what were all the things that I could not put words or name to. From like it's true of childhood too, but like into the space of like a kind of moment where I could be like, oh, I'm a person in the world having these thoughts. Like there really did feel like a shift for me where I kind of felt like something clicked in. And I don't think that's everyone's trajectory at all. I think there are these high schoolers sometimes that I'll see that will just feel like they're really with it and they really seem to be knowing what's going on, and I was just so not like that. So I think because of that, it feels like this really interesting territory for me. And I think that's also why people have the fantasy of returning to high school. The movies of like, I'm going to go back to high school and I'm going to redo it, is because so much is happening that's like way out of your maturity level at that time. Like it's just an overwhelm of kind of sensation and information. And so there's this desire, right, to do a redo when you have some command over it. So I think some of it is a redo in that way for me. Even though I don't feel like the characters reflect me, they're an aspect. All of them have an aspect that then I like to sort of ratchet up to an extreme to look at.
Yeah, I've never asked you the question in a formal or an informal setting, like, is X part of your work autobiographical? Because it always seems to be a riff on reality as opposed to a reflection, as opposed to a capturing of reality. And I think the thing that makes me think of that first in the Butterfly Lampshade is, in addition to Francie and Aunt Min and her mom as the main, and Elaine as the main characters, it's fair to say that the other main characters in this book are a lamp and a door lock and a tent and a hammer. And so this is not the first time that common household objects have had a life of their own in your work. And so I'd be curious to hear about that choice. And I'm wondering if it's ever something you have to deal with in this kind of thing, in a promotional setting where someone reads your work and they're like, oh, you must be a collector of, walnut species or exotic figurines or something.
Right. It is with Lemon Cake. There was occasion, because in Lemon Cake, the narrator can taste the emotions of the person who made the food that she's eating. And several people did ask me if I could do that, which was very gratifying. That they thought it was a real thing, and that, so that was very nice. Yeah, objects, I think, and objects played a role in this book clearly. And there are these sort of materialized objects and things with the butterfly, and there's beetle and a couple of roses. And then, yes, these like the hammer and the locks. And I think, I haven't, someone did ask me if I go to like yard sales. Actually, yeah, they did, because that's what Francie does. So that is very nice, actually, when people sort of link that up. I feel so interested in all the things that we layer on objects and the ways they collect all this kind of meaning. That has always been interesting to me. And again, I think that harkens back to childhood, where everything that part is very autobiographical, and that everything did feel very full of like a friendliness. There were so many things and objects that I found interesting and I've been seeing it in my kids who are 7 now. Like, it's just, what was the thing the other day? Like a rubber band, you know, and they'll suddenly bond with one rubber band over another rubber band, and they're both doing it. Like, it just feels like this thing. And I remember that time so vividly. And it really felt like the world was kind of populated. Some things were scary and some things were allies, and it would be sort of this whole thing that was going on. So in that, I think, and I just wanted to kind of lean into that hard in this book and have the objects be materializing, have that be part of her world and her job, and have all of that. And I read some thing theory, which is like a thing. I got some books on thing theory, which is fascinating. They're like, what is our relationship to things, and when are things abandoned, and when do we orphan them, and when do we like resurrect them? So there's all these theorists writing kind of beautifully about it. So yeah.
One of my like literary fantasies is to like I want to have you and Nicholson Baker in conversation together, and I want like one of you to be like, so doorknobs, and then the other one will go for 10 minutes, and then
right.
Yeah, and then the other one will be like, so surge protectors, and then
well, it's like, it's just like, we do not exist without these things. We do not exist floating in a vacuum. It's like, we have settings, we have props, we live inside spaces, we treat our objects in certain ways, they disappear. Walker Percy writes about this beautifully, where he just talks about how we have these things and then they kind of vanish from our view, and then we have to reclaim them. He has this, or like a bird, like he talks about, we don't see the beauty of the bird. I think it's in his essay, Loss of the Creature, where he's like, we only rediscover the sparrow if you're like in exile in a dungeon and there's a window and the sparrow is singing to you. Only then do you see the sparrow again, that you have lost from your vision, sort of because of familiarity. And so like the familiarity of all the things, when you look around the space that you're in, that you get accustomed to a certain amount of shapes together. And so everything starts to actually vanish a little bit. And so how do we recreate some of the stuff that is meaningful to us? So, and I think that, I guess when I say that too, I actually feel very similarly about language, because I think, how do we recreate a sentence where some of the words are in a slightly different way than we've seen before, so that we can feel something through the words that we might not have felt if the words were in the same order they usually are, which is sometimes one way to define the idea of cliche, which is the words are kind of happening in the same usual way, so we don't feel anything because it doesn't catch us unawares.
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Then I want to make sure we get folks from the community in here. We already have some questions showing up in the Q&A. If you have a question for Aimee about the Butterfly Lampshade or any of her other wonderful books, please post it in the chat feature. The one I feel like I've asked you in a formal setting before, and I've asked you just in conversation before, and I'm sure you get this like in every third interview. So please, if you're not interested in answering it, just say so. But like, I think given the surrealism and fantastical elements of your work, I spend a little time writing down like how I would describe your work, and I feel like it's like Roald Dahl as backed up by the Wrecking Crew. Like there's something Californian about its mysteriousness, but I think, do people meet you and think that you're going to be like Edward Gorey or something, or think you're going to be like some kind of like weirdo looking over their shoulder and talking, and talking about the wallpaper or something? Like, are they surprised when you're not a strange person when they meet you?
Yes, sometimes they are surprised. I think that people, yes, I think they are. And I have a certain pride in that, because I think we're all strange, and if I just would be delighted to give anyone any more permission to sort of allow the strangenesses inside them to come out on the page or in whatever way, because yeah, I think that's the place that I get to kind of explore that in me. And I think I have a presentation of regularness, whatever that is. But it's, of course, we're all such complex mixes. So I feel like that is, that combination is kind of important to me. That it's like, but yeah, no, sometimes people will say that, or they also, there was once I had like I have a line in a story called Debbie Land about like a really mean girl, and she's very like critical of some woman's eyebrows. And I had a colleague say like, I'm worried you're checking out my eyebrows. And I felt terrible, but I wanted to reassure her. I think I tried, but I don't know if she believed me, but it was true to be like, I don't actually consciously notice that stuff. Like I'm not sitting there critiquing her eyebrows. It's just you observe things without realizing what you're observing, and then things come out on the page. It's not like I'm thinking of anyone's particular eyebrows. I'm aware of my eyebrows. I'm aware of other eyebrows, whatever. It's all a mishmash. But that I think it's that it's not like, in my experience, the writer is out in the world and recording the things that are in the world. It's not conscious. Like it's coming from this subconscious, unconscious place. And so whatever bubbles up, bubbles up. So yeah, the weirdness is all there. And yeah, show me a person who isn't weird. They just don't exist. We're all, you know, we have many things in common, and we're all very specifically ourselves.
I think this is a really good place for me to ask the last question, and then I want to make sure that we get the folks who are kind enough to come tonight to get their questions answered. Us speaking virtually and us not being able to see the folks who are here leads me to ask that your work as an author, you've taken your work all over the world, and within your work, it has gone. I don't feel indulgent in saying it has gone to the farthest reaches of the imagination, and yet you, as a person, have not gone too far from home. You live in the same place you grew up, and you didn't go to school too far from where you grew up, and so I'm curious about that seeming contrast. How far your work takes you and us as its readers, and how close you have stayed to the same place.
Yeah, I think it doesn't feel particularly deliberate, but it also feels like it. I mean, yeah, I've been largely in California with just little stints elsewhere, but up and down the coast at different points. And I mean, I do feel like there is this limitlessness to the imagination. And although at certain points it would have been kind of nice to go other places, there were sort of opportunities that opened up that then I took. Like my teaching job sort of kept me in LA, and that was a really good gig to have, is a good gig to have. And I like the idea of knowing and re-knowing a place. I wanted to live in LA as an adult because I had one notion of it as a kid, and I wanted to retry it again, the place I grew up in. And maybe that is related to this interest of like, what do we think, what is the world like to us as children, and what is it like later? So there's something about relearning in that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it is helpful that maybe if there's a part of me that feels claustrophobic about the similarity of the place, even though LA is a really large one, that I feel like imaginatively we are all very free to go wherever, you know. But like you say, I think there is a California thing that, you know, there's a presence of LA that I can't track because I'm here. Like there's a, Borges says about, there was some writing about the Middle East, and he was like, if someone's writing and they're in the Middle East, they can't write about anything with a camel. Like they're not going to do that because that's a sort of caricature. In the same way, like I will never put a palm tree in one of my stories. Like the LA that I live and sort of breathe in, you know, it's sort of yucky air right now because of the heat and the fires. Anyway, that LA is so much a part of my kind of regular day that it's going to come out through other things, but I think it's baked in there for sure.
I want to do a quick visual aid here, and then I want to get to some questions from everybody who's here. So I got to put down my microphone. I want everybody to see.
Oh, so nice.
Aimee Bender Library, which I cannot recommend more. It has been an endless source of joy for me over the last 10 years. I recommend you get all of these, but most recently the Butterfly Lampshade, her new one. And just thanks for chatting with me, Aimee. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you too, and thank you. And BRAT Pack America, Kevin's book.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Yes.
Yeah, and it has a whole bunch of Tulsa stuff in it too, of course, because of S.E. Hinton.
Fantastic. I love that.
So let's make sure we get to the questions here. I think, if I remember correctly, Jeff wants me to read the questions as they are here in the chat window. If that's, Jeff, if I'm wrong, tell me so. But Aimee, the first question is from Josie Rosenthal, and she would like to know, is Francie drinking the water with the butterfly in it a metaphor for something?
Great question, Josie, and thank you for it. So this is my annoying answer. It is a metaphor for something, but I don't know what it is. Like, I think this is how it is for me, is that I'll feel like an image will come through and it will feel charged, and I'll know it has a kind of emotional depth to it, but I don't know what it means. And it's kind of important that I don't know what it means, so that I don't kind of make it an easy one-to-one relationship. So I think there was this butterfly in this water, and it had come out of the lamp, and I felt like she would have to drink it because she needed to keep it, and there wasn't time for her to do anything else. And then I think that became something for me to work with in the book, which is that it's now a part of her. So what the other two objects that emerge, she does not ingest. But the butterfly she does. So something of whatever that kind of rupture is between a thing and reality, and this sort of break that she is a witness to, that is something that is part of her and will remain part of her forever. And so I think what that thing is going to change per reader, and that's actually fine with me. Like, I think I want to make it as sharp and clear an image as I can, so that you can then play with it in your own mind and decide what you think it means. And it doesn't have to mean anything. Like, it can have just sort of a feeling to it.
The next question is from Ashley Bach. I love the book a lot. And one of the things I like about this book is how your protagonists your books in general, is how your protagonists have fixations and drives that are explored in a way that makes us empathize with the character and understand why they have those fixations. Unlike with Mona or Rose, Francie has this very traumatic childhood that does not come from a superstitious or supernatural place, and she has to live with this fear that she is going to become her mother. Was it different writing Francie than writing your previous protagonists?
Thank you, Ashley. What a wonderful question. And I'm so glad that you responded to the book. And yeah, I think there was something that felt different about her in the way that each character kind of comes with their own feeling on the page. And I had a sign up where I was working, and it said sort of measured. There was a measured quality to Francie that felt like there was a lot going on around her, and I felt like I was walking slowly through a space around which there was a lot of sort of, stuff, and I was trying to follow her reserve as she's navigating a lot of chaos and fear. So I think in that way, she did feel different than Rose from Lemon Cake and Mona from Invisible Sun of My Own, who I'm so glad you mentioned. And I think I wanted to, maybe because there's a relationship to my own aunt in it, and seeing how that affected my mom and how that affected my childhood, just in that there was a fear, there was just a worry, even though everyone was okay, there was a worry about people not being okay. And that felt like just part of my childhood, and that I really wanted to contend with this idea of what if one of the characters is clearly dealing with psychosis. That word felt really charged. And what if there's also this strange rupture in the butterflies and the beetle and the roses that is not a psychosis, but also what is it? And how does Francie deal with that? And so that felt different too, because I think I just felt like it was just a different territory. And maybe more defined. Like, I think I haven't wanted to I wouldn't want to have like a word like psychosis in the other books. It felt like a very specific kind of word to contend with.
I want to make sure that I don't see any further questions in the chat, but I want to make sure anyone who has something else they'd like to ask about of Aimee about the Butterfly Lampshade or any of her previous books gets a moment to, or gets a chance to. So,
Green.
Yeah.
Questions for Kevin.
Yeah. Because I will ask one more thing if there are no further questions from the audience. Audience? I guess I'd just like to know, I think Butterfly Lampshade is your 6th book, and I think you have an even number of short story collections and novels, 3 and 3. And I'm curious, what's next? Or do we put 9 cars on the highway and see which one blasts?
I mean, I think that's exactly where I'm at. I'm at the 9 cars. Yeah, it's, I mean, as I'm sure many people are feeling, time right now is so strange. I am now back to my like 10 minutes, trying to squeeze in 10 minutes where I can. So I am working on things, but they're small 9 toy cars on the toy highway. But writing is helpful. Like I do feel better when I write my 10 minutes than when I don't. So even though it's pandemic time and everything is odd that way.
We are gonna let Stacy Flood from Magic City Books, or from the Magic City Books community, have the very last word, which is, I don't have a particular question, but I simply wanted to highly recommend this book to anyone watching. It is absolutely wonderful. Stacy Flood, you are absolutely right.
Nice to see you, sort of,
Yeah, this is a wonderful book, as are all of Aimee Bender's books. Please pick up your copy from Magic City here in Tulsa. There's a link to it, and I'm sure you can get the other 5 Aimee Bender books to round out your collection from Magic City also. Really important to support your local bookstores in this difficult time.
Yeah.
They're simply too precious an institution for us not to, and they do too much good for all of us in our communities, and we want them to be around for a very long time. Actually, one question came in at the very last minute. Holly would like to know. She would like to know. I would so love for an invisible sign of my own to be made into a movie. Is this possible?
Oh, Invisible. I think because I like Invisible, because they made Invisible Sign into a movie, which was a complicated experience for me, but also good in many ways. This one, yeah, so far I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe. It's hard with these books that are like, first person is tough because there's so much internal stuff, so it's like, I think it would be, that's sorry, holding a baby, I love it. No. I think it could, yeah, there's probably a way to make it work, but I think it is, it's not immediately clear, right? Because it's like, how do you—
Oh, love for this to be I'm sorry, I misread the question. Yes.
No, you're good.
Yes. Invisible Sign was a movie. Could Butterfly Lampshade be a movie? Yeah. Yes.
Maybe someday. I mean, yeah. Yeah, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Did you get to keep the axe from the Invisible Sign movie?
This is a good question. I saw it once. It was just a complicated experience for me because it was nice to kind of wash my hands of it and be like, make of it what you will.
Sure, yeah.
So it's so awkward to watch something that's been remade. So I don't remember. I don't know. I think so. Mm. But there might have been some issue about like children in the movie with an axe. They did change some things, but not a lot. But it has some of the flavor of the book, but it also feels different. So I don't know. I feel like as a fiction writer, you're just like, this is my little kingdom and I get to do it all. And then there's such a release in letting something go to a collaborative art, which is wonderful and also terrifying to me. So.
Absolutely. Aimee, this has been so great. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk and that everybody in Tulsa and at Magic City got a chance to hear about this great book. Please be sure to pick up your copy of The Butterfly Lampshade and the entire Aimee Bender catalog of 6 great books. I think
Kevin, for your questions, your engagement with the book, all of it. I appreciate it so much. And thank you to all of you for coming and Tulsa.
Yeah, a real pleasure to see you all. I think Jeff just wants me to sign us out. So thank you for coming. Please support Magic City Books and all of the great independent bookstores around the country. and we will see you very soon. Good night, everybody.